Hey, welcome back, guys. Fred Hampton, the charismatic leader of the Black Panther Party's Chicago chapter, has finally gotten adequate representation on the big screen in Shaka King's new hit film, Judas and the Black Messiah. The film features two prominent Get Out alumni, Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, who portray Fred Hampton and William O Neal respectively, and focuses on the latter's infiltration of the Chicago Panthers. In this video, we'll analyze the film's key points and offer context and parallels to this real-life tragedy and its legacy. Before we begin, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and bell notification to immediately receive these videos. Also, big thank you to all of my channel donors. If you'd like to be the next one, drop $1 on that Cash App for us. Lastly, a spoiler alert is now in effect for all things Judas. Here we go. The Son of Man will go, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born. These words were spoken by Jesus to his disciples in the midst of his forthcoming betrayal and crucifixion. I begin the review here because it provides great insight into the film's title and theme. Judas is a reference to the biblical disciple of Jesus who betrayed his Messiah for 30 pieces of silver. The idea of personal gain superseded the larger mission of his leader and led to his downfall. Similarly, William O Neal's betrayal of Fred Hampton was rooted in self-enrichment over collective advancement, and ironically, both Judas and O'Neal's fate played out identically. But we'll get to that in just a few. Whereas the Judas portion of the title is a parallel to Bill O'Neal, the Black Messiah aspect is a nod to Jesus, Fred Hampton, and the FBI, believe it or not. Jesus, as we who identify as Christians well know, was the Messiah in the flesh. His teachings were perceived as radical, and he was attacked by the powers that be of his day for enlightening the people against the status quo. This is a direct parallel to Chairman Fred, who was the dynamic leader of the Chicago Black Panther Party during the latter half of the 1960s. His rhetoric was infectious, galvanizing the spirits of not just his own people, but other groups whose thoughts were aligned with circumventing oppression and degradation. Though a young man barely scratching the surface of adulthood, his political maneuvers scared the living shit out of the U.S. government, J. Edgar Hoover in particular. This brings us to the FBI factor of the film's title. The Bureau, under Director J. Edgar Hoover, established the Counterintelligence Program, or COINTELPRO for short, in the late 1950s, though the tactic of federal infiltration far precedes this date. In fact, there's evidence of organized federal surveillance and disruption of Black groups going back to Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, ironically spearheaded by Hoover in the beginning of his federal career. Upon founding the investigative program, Hoover outlined 5 objectives to thwart any semblance of Black political and economic progression, the second of which pertains to the film's title. It reads, "Prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement." The memorandum goes on to suggest that Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. He is a martyr of the movement today. An interesting observation due to Malcolm's influence over the Panthers. In fact, without Malcolm's life, death, and subsequent autobiography, the Black Panthers as we know them might not have come into formation. It was his ideologies that ignited the warrior spirit in the young students turned revolutionaries, an explanation for why the Panthers were so young by and large. It also suggested that King could be a very real contender for this Messiah position, should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrines, i.e. nonviolence, and embrace Black nationalism. The message was quite clear. Hoover feared the rise of a Black Messiah and conducted every subversion imaginable to stop such an ascension. This brings us to the premise of the film. Set in 1968/69, 17-year-old William O Neal is tapped by the FBI to infiltrate the Chicago Panthers and provide intel on its de facto leader, Fred Hampton. Hampton's political efforts are extremely alarming to Hoover, as he's rallying support for his aims from not just select Panther outfits, but various street organizations as well. O'Neal's hands are forced due to the legal strangleholds on him as a car booster and FBI impersonator. FBI agent Roy Mitchell, portrayed by Jesse Plemons, who you might remember as the quietly maniacal Todd from Breaking Bad, sets the terms for O'Neal post-capture, provide intel on Hampton and the Panthers, or face nearly 7 years for impersonating a federal officer and the stolen car. O'Neal opted for freedom over incarceration, and he began surveilling Chairman Fred and the inner workings of the Panthers organization. This aspect of the film was interesting because the audience was able to witness the many beneficial elements of the Panthers, including classes on self-defense, the free breakfast program, which the U.S. government would later copy in their own public school system, the politicization of multiple groups suffering under the same enemy, i.e. the Rainbow Coalition, foundations for a free medical clinic in Chicago, and the interpersonal relationships between Black men and women within the movement, which this commentator found to be a very subtle yet powerful display. The aforementioned Rainbow Coalition was a prominent part of the chairman's revolutionary legacy. The film depicts him meeting with three main cadres: the Young Patriots organization, led by William Preacher Man Fesperman, the Young Lords, founded by Jose Cha-Cha Jimenez, and the Crowns, a fictionalized amalgamation of various street organizations throughout Chicago. In the real history, Chairman Fred convinced Chicago's 3,000-member Blackstone Rangers gang to make the conversion to a radical political force as a new Black Panther chapter. This would have effectively doubled the national size of the Black Panther Party, and got so far that the gang changed its name to the Black Peastone Nation. William O Neal reported the pending merger in December of 1968, and the FBI quickly orchestrated actions to thwart it in the form of fake letters intended to exacerbate tensions between the two groups. This conflict was brilliantly depicted on screen, and a microcosm of the many insidious tactics taken by COINTELPRO. In fact, as mentioned in the film, they used the same maneuvers against Malcolm X, Dr. King, etc. Malcolm's ousting from the Nation of Islam was due in large part to such devices. Any measure was used to prevent coalitions, as this was a COINTELPRO mandate. To add insult to injury, O'Neal further destroyed merger negotiations between two other Chicago gangs, the Vice Lords and the Mau Mau's, according to John Potash, author of the FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, which I suggest each and every one of you watching this read. On the subject of agents, the film also showed how the Panthers were infiltrated from every level, and that O'Neal's work against the movement was just the highest rung in a very deep ladder of treachery. The George Sams segment was used for such a display. The Panthers, as with the NOI, Malcolm X's OAAU, and even King's SCLC, were rife with agents. Hoover's counterintelligence operations certainly didn't discriminate in regards to Black progression, and every organization caught the shrapnel from the insidious collective. Another element of the film I enjoyed was the discipline between the Panthers organization. These are not just your sisters, but your sisters in arms. Act like it. Fred relates to a smitten O'Neal trying to campaign for a Panther woman. The idea that every member viewed the other as a comrade elevated the struggle to those unaware. We were never simply fighting for social equality and integration, but instead were involved in an all-out war against an evil society for advancement. That war was detailed greatly in the film, including shootouts with the police, the bombing of the Panthers' Chicago headquarters, and Fred's drugging and subsequent assassination, an illegal raid and assault that resulted in the victims receiving minor monetary compensation over a 12-year civil trial. That brings us to the real focus of the film. Though chronicling the chairman's latter years and journey, Judas is really told from the perspective of O'Neal, which took some folks aback. However, the film is called Judas and the Black Messiah, so the focus is warranted and speaks for itself. O'Neal's initiation, acceptance, and later trepidation of the FBI's tactics are fully covered throughout. Some would argue that the film attempted to humanize O'Neal to a degree, and that may very well be the case. However, I think that it's important that we view O'Neal's story in context. He was essentially a kid that had gotten in over his head. He made a mistake that Black people have unfortunately been repeating since our journey in America, the underestimation of just how evil this system is. He was sold the same dream that many Black Americans were. The pursuit of profit trumps the gravity of loyalty. In the movie Malcolm X, the title character lamented what his criminal associates would have become if not for the American constraints, damning them to the limited options that required underworld activity. He stated that, quote, We were all victims of the American social order, end quote. Though a willing participant and perpetrator of unfathomable events that resulted in one of the most tragic losses of the Black freedom movement, William O Neal fell into this category all the same. He valued American ideals as shown through his capitalistic exploits, even if there remained internal conflictions. Also, the film even showed his expression of admiration for the very agent he was working for, Roy Mitchell. He stated that he viewed Mitchell as a role model, whereas his contemporaries found inspiration from major Black figures such as King and X. This quote provided insight into O'Neal's view of white society. After he mentions this in the film, the scene cuts to Mitchell's home, where O'Neal is shown an opulent side of the American ecosystem. His maneuvers against his own people were rooted in his desire for such abundance and resulted in his death by suicide 20 years later due to his inability to cope with his treachery against the Panthers. His death, as I previously mentioned, coincides with the biblical Judas, who similarly killed himself after betraying Christ, unable to live with crossing the Messiah he once followed. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Judas and the Black Messiah. I thought the acting was superb on all sides. I love Dominique Fishback's performance as Akua and Jerry, formerly known as Deborah Johnson, Fred's fiancée and mother to his only son, Fred Hampton Jr. The exchanges the film shared between the two of them were intimate and authentic. Kaluuya's performance as the chairman was exceptional. His mannerisms and voice inflection of the slain revolutionary were spot on, offering chills to this commentator in some areas. The speech he gave fresh from prison stays with you, as do his many quotables in between. It's surprising to see such a film be released, as the heavy content therein has been largely hidden from mainstream outlets. Hopefully, more films are created with the FBI and COINTELPRO in mind, because Chairman Fred was not the first victim of the American government, and he certainly won't be the last. Thank you for watching today's video. What did you think of Judas and the Black Messiah? Be sure to leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Fun fact, in further researching for this review, I came across a letter that my mother received from the Fred Hampton Memorial Scholarship Fund. She was honored with an Image Award for her excellence in community work and profession. The letter was signed by Bill Hampton, the chairman's late older brother. Them Chicago roots run deep. I previously shared this post on my Twitter page, so make sure you're following me for more insight like this at airtight_magic. Also, the brother who portrays Bobby Rush in the film, Daryl Britt Gibson, is the same actor who plays Rolla from Power Season 1. For those of you who follow my Power breakdowns, I'm sure you enjoyed seeing one of our own. As always, if you liked today's video, go ahead and drop $1 on that Cash App for us, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more content such as this. This is Rudy P. Magic of Rudy P. Magic Beats, and have a blessed one until the next one. Peace, y'all.